Well, good afternoon, good morning to all of our fine customers that are attending across every province in Canada, I believe, today. So welcome to our webinar, The Hidden Cost of Uncontrolled Data. We have an excellent session planned for you today. And so as they say in show business, let's start the show. Bit of housekeeping today. We're going to be recording this call for on-demand distribution and playback. You will get notified at the outset of the webinar when that recording is available. We want you to participate. We've crafted a number of polls and questions as we like to keep these events interactive and collaborative as possible. Your feedback also helps us plan the next event. It makes it more bespoke and more contextual. If you're experiencing any tech trouble, please reach out via the chat function, and our team will do our best to help you troubleshoot. Keep in mind, it's a live event, limited troubleshooting capabilities. It will be recorded, so if you do have to drop, we'll make sure that we get you a copy on demand. Lastly, most importantly, you will have your chance to provide feedback via an event survey at the outset of the webinar. Now, this is so important to us as we put a lot of effort into our events, whether they're virtual or in market. And without you and your input, we cannot hit the excellence we strive for. You will also be entered to win a portable Lenovo monitor by completing the feedback survey. So please participate. There's a chance to win, and we want to hear from you. Our agenda today, we're going to start with some introductions and then move into an executive summary and briefing of the problem that we aim to tackle, which is the hidden cost of uncontrolled data and how what you cannot see is costing you. But then, of course, we're going to move into the solution. We're going to highlight the importance and value of the data and more risk assessment, which is effectively your roadmap to ending privacy and compliance risk. This will help you quantify and qualify legislative and compliance chaos, which we're going to talk about in a second. The creme de la creme, the solution demo. So the good folks at Data and More, who are history buffs, they actually use the JFK file repository as the demo today to prove out the capability and the function of the platform. It's pretty cool to see that specific content in action. So you're definitely going to want to stick around for that. Time permitting, we're going to try to get some Q&A answered. There's only 60 minutes, so we're going to do our best. We will be reaching out at the outset. So if we need to bring the show to your doorstep, rest assured that we can do that. Now, the goal of today, we want you to leave with one insight, one idea, one approach, one starting point that will help you end privacy and compliance risk for your business. And we're going to revisit that at the end of the webinar. My name is Russ Ruser. I'm the Director of IT Services for Think Technologies, and I'll be your host and moderator for today. I often talk about the power of connection, and my sales team is giving me grief constantly about spending too much time on introduction and scoping calls, speaking to customers about their hobbies and their interests outside of work. I will never stop doing that because, to be honest, in this digital age with AI knocking at the doorstep, I think relationships are super important. And if you want to talk about painting Warhammer nerd miniatures, rafting on giant dinosaurs, fishing, or whatever it is that you like to do, let's talk. Those are the important things. If you're new or a stranger who is to Think Technologies, well, Think Technologies is the parent company of two divisions. Direct Dial, which most of us are known for, which delivers exceptional IT procurement and solutions in a customer-centric platform. directMSP, our services division, provides managed and professional IT services across 6 core competencies, including cybersecurity. We recently won an award, an accolade from Deloitte. And if there's one thing that I want you to take away from this slide, it's that we care deeply about our people, we care deeply about our partners, and most importantly, we care deeply about you, our customers. And it's that customer-centric focus that I think has allowed us to thrive for more than 25 years. And so if you haven't worked with us yet, it starts with a conversation. Please reach out to our team. We love to help. We love to solve problems. Let's get into it. Compliance chaos. What is that? In today's digital economy, Protecting personal and sensitive data isn't just best practice anymore, it's the law. Across Canada and beyond, organizations are held to a complex web of data privacy regulations, each with its own requirements, enforcement mechanisms, and penalties for non-compliance. From national standards like PIPEDA and sector-specific frameworks like HIPAA to provincial acts such as FIPA, PIPA, and Quebec's Law 25, this has become a critical operational priority. If you're a Canadian organization and you're doing business with companies in the European Union, you are now subject to GDPR. If you're doing business in the United Kingdom, that's the Data Protection Act. So you now have dual or even triple compliance requirements. When we add in payment security mandates like PCI DSS, financial oversight bodies like OSFI and IROC, industry certifications like CSA and Interact Verified, it becomes clear. The rules are many, the stakes are high, and the cost of falling short is greater than ever. Regulatory fines and penalties, legal action and liability, reputational damage, business disruption, lost revenue opportunities, and increased cyber risk. South of the border, organizations follow a broad spectrum within the US framework. Again, HIPAA, PCI DSS, NIST, CMMC, the newly announced SCF, and FedRAMP. These frameworks scale from minimal to robust, and the biggest takeaway here isn't the number of frameworks, it's that your customers in the very near future, your customers are going to start demanding that you have attestation to one or more of these frameworks. Whether it's healthcare, finance, or government contracts, you will need to demonstrate compliance with these standards to keep business, to win business, and to build trust. So, how do we solve that chaos for both ourselves and our customers? And the answer is putting structure around that chaos. Enter data and more. Our presenters today are Jaap Mantel, General Manager for North America, and Sag Barris, Director of Customer Enablement. I've been working with Jaap and Sag for over a decade and a half, and I can tell you that they are elite in their field. But the real reason they're here today, the real reason they're a partner of ours, is their work ethic, their passion and commitment to helping customers. These guys will fly into Ottawa and drive an hour up a highway to meet a customer that's struggling with data and compliance issues, to help them along that journey and to help them solve their challenges. So no matter how big or how small, their dedication to solving those real world business challenges is nothing short of inspiring. And that is a true story that I just said. So without further ado, I'd like to give the stage over to Jaap to speak more about the 100% issue. Jaap?
Fantastic. I'm just going to share my screen. Hello, everyone. Good. All right. Everyone should be able to see my screen. The 100% issue. Is that correct?
You're good.
Fantastic. All right, everyone. My name is Jaap. I'm calling in today from Central Alberta. Pleasure to be here. And thank you for all those kind words, Russ. We are effectively a software vendor. And for the last 10 years, we've been focused on helping organizations with the 100% issue. I was born and raised in Europe. I'm a little direct. I get a little bit confrontational sometimes, which I kind of mix with some Canadian niceness. I'm officially Canadian now as well. Very happy to be here. I'm definitely going to stay here with my wife and 4 kids. Life is good. The 100% issue is that we, as Data More, literally have created a fund. And this is where we get to give you money because we are searching for the one problem that no one has really been able to tackle, and that is that no one knows what kind of data they have. And we just haven't found anyone that's been able to tackle this. And we've been doing this for a long time. So myself, I've been in this space for almost 20 years, guiding organizations from SharePoint 01 or even before that, in the days when it was still called Tahoe. all the way up to O3, MOS, Fast Search in 08, the integration in 2013, BPOS, Office 365, and now here we are. SharePoint Office 365 has always had the goal of achieving the centralization of data, forms, and processes. And throughout time, people have migrated data. They've been dealing with mergers, they've been dealing with acquisitions. And even though the dream has always been that the one platform solves it all, we haven't really come across one scenario where this has ever been achieved. And if you don't know what data you have, the problem statements that we then encounter is that, well, is it at the right place? People do mergers, they do acquisitions, migrations, people come, people go, managers leave, the managers come. So what exactly do you have? What did you inherit and or what are you dealing with? If you don't know what data you have, then do you know what kind of data you have? Is it business data, sensitive data? Do you have compliance issues? Do you have issues where it's kind of like, well, we have sensitive files, security data, passwords. Do you know where it is? And do you know who has access to it? And this, of course, everyone always talks about 15 layers of protection, but it becomes very, very painfully obvious in the case of all of those public data breaches that everyone is reading about all the time. Another thing is that even in the last year, everyone now has budget for AI. Few people can actually tell me what it does. Some people think that, oh, we have Copilot, or we can buy Copilot. We have data, let's put them together and create some magic. And it creates a bunch of different issues across the board, but the budget still exists. So even if we look in just in the last few months, I have two reports for you. The first one is KPMG, where effectively earlier in the year, they explained that everyone is investing in AI. Everyone has a budget for it. All the CFOs on the golf courses, they love talking about it. Everyone's investing in it. But the question then is, okay, how is it going? Well, we probably heard about the MIT report that came out about a month ago. It effectively explained that some people think that AI is simply dumping data into a bot and expecting magic. The result was that across the board, all over North America, over 95% of all AI agents and pilots failed to produce any form of value. And that's very frightening because there's a lot of money being spent right now. There's a big dream, there's a big vision, and it definitely isn't wasted in the sense that AI is amazing. It can be amazing, but it's about as good as what you put into it. So this whole AI journey has made one thing extremely clear. If you don't know what data you have, you're going to have some issues across the board. Well, what kind of issues? I gathered some of the bigger cases that we have here in the last few months of how people are getting into trouble. Why? Because a lot of executives want to use AI. IT managers sometimes simply comply with the wishes of executives, and they start putting data into AI. Well, if it's illegal data that you shouldn't have to begin with, personal data, private data, contractual data, T4 statements across the board, you're going to get into trouble effectively. And here's 10 examples, 5 slides. All these slides, by the way, are available to the directMSP team. So they'll reach out. You can get these. You can click on the links. You can go through everything yourself. Here's some of the examples of people using copyrighted works to train AI. Or some people even thought it was a good idea to use pirated sources and then put it into AI. Some people have been using other people's books or journalistic content. So there's these website scrapers that AI effectively goes into. So then we go into copyright infringements, infringements against even AI image generators, image watermarks, again, scraping more data. So it kind of goes across the board and it gets into the conversation about compliance. Compliance is one thing, but even the AI legislation is changing every single week. So pretty recently in a few countries in Europe, specifically Denmark, it became policy that your personal likeness, a picture of you, your voice, Any recordings of you, for example, are part of personal identifiable information. You are the owner of your data. The problem is that if your company stores your picture, your likeness, your data, then they're not allowed to use it for AI. So we kind of go through it and then, okay, so what are the consequences? Well, there's a lot of examples. You and I'm assuming here, probably don't have $1.4 billion to pay in fines for illegally using data. Google did. Meta as well. About 12 months before this, Meta was paying $1.4 billion. There's a wide varieties, there's lots of ways of how people are getting content, what they're doing with it, and what they should be doing with it. Google, for example, was scraping people's Android phone. So in the state of California, they got fined again. And we go over this over and over and over with our organizations, right? Our superpower is to provide an assessment that's going to show you what kind of data you have, where it is, should you be having it, is it at the right place, who has access to this data? And there's a wide variety of challenges that we tackle with this one picture. It's not just the problem statements, like a governance program or dealing with risk, or you might probably have a security tool one way or the other, and you want it to be enabled. You want to have justification to your AI program. There's a wide variety of problems, but there's also a wide variety of opportunities. One of the big reasons why people like to do an assessment with us is that if you're an IT leader or you're holding some form of budget and you want to have a justification for why your organization should be spending that budget in 2026, what better way is there than to make an appealing case with data-driven decisions? Effectively, there's a lot of intellectual self-proclaimed powerhouses on the internet, especially on LinkedIn, that always say you have to make data-driven decisions. And it's absolutely true. But we still have to find our first organization that by themselves does any form of data classification and that can answer these questions. If you are the exception, my public cry out is to you. Reach out to you. I will literally give you money and you don't have to buy anything from you. But you're going to be the first. I will challenge you slightly. So organizations, let's say over 50 users. If you are my first unicorn, please reach out to me because I would really, really like to hear from you. All right. So what will follow next is we'll have my colleague Zach that will share some live examples of an assessment, the JFK files, and hopefully give you some good ideas of what you can do for your organization.
Awesome. Thank you, Jaap. I guess this means I have to do some stuff, right?
Yes.
Oh,
If you'd be so kind,
yeah, no
Mr.
worries.
Barris.
Happy to do it. So, hi everyone. Quick introduction. My name is Sag Barris, and I am responsible for the enablement and success of all our North American customers. So in a nutshell, this means I am responsible for creating the business alignment between the data and more software and the business objectives our customers are looking to accomplish. So in my portion of the webinar, I'd like to show you two things. The first one is I want to take you in and actually show you the data and more software, and in particular, the level of visibility it creates and the kind of insights it can provide. And the second thing I'm going to show you is a redacted sample of an actual customer data assessment that we did that shows the types of insights my team can provide. Because it's that kind of webinar, I'm going to present those backwards in the opposite order and start with the insights. Then I'll pop the hood to show you how we did it. But first, as we are the fish jumping into the next bowl here, let me start by explaining our data assessment. So as I'm sure you know, there's a ton of noise out there, and our data assessment is how we like to cut through that noise. The idea is to show the software working against a subset of real customer data, as cool as the JFK files are, because we just find it's always more compelling that way. So we tend to focus the assessments that we do against one of the questions that you can see on the bottom of the screen. Each one aligns with one of the core capabilities or core solution capabilities of the Data and More platform. So regardless of the questions that we're answering, our approach when we're managing the data and trying to do these data assessments is really the same. First, we want to find what's important, and I'll show you that as we go into the software. The second one is use the insights in the software to ask some smart questions, which can help you drive your information management and data governance program forward. And then when it comes to the actual management of the data, the approach that we take is delete what you don't need, because if you've deleted it and you don't have it anymore, it's not the liability that Jaap was just talking about a few minutes ago. And the stuff that you do need to keep, that you legitimately need to hang on to, we want to make sure that data is properly organized and properly managed. So we are going to find what's important, create the insights and ask the smart questions, delete what you don't need, and then organize and properly manage what's left. So that's what I'm going to show you, and let's dive in. So as we jump into this data assessment, these are actual data assessment results that were produced near the end of July. So they're a couple of months old now. And this particular customer, if we go back to the previous slide, asked two questions. They said, can you please tell me if we get hacked? Let's say some user in our company decides they have to help that African prince move their money into the US. They click on the proverbial phishing link and they have their account compromised. And we get an attacker in our environment that starts stealing data. What's that going to mean to us? What's going to happen? What's the cost? What's our risk? The second question that they asked was, much like hopefully many of you, is there's this little thing out there called AI. You might have heard of it. And this particular company wanted to know, if we roll out Copilot now, because we're getting a ton of corporate pressure to do that, can we do it responsibly? And if we did, what would that implementation look like? So those were the two questions that they asked. As you can see here, we looked at a pretty good sample of their data, about 35 million items and about 11 terabytes of data. You can see the number of SharePoint site collections and so on that we went through. And what we were able to do was we were able to show them what their data looks like. Big picture, what kind of data do they have? And as you can see here, they have a lot of data, privacy data, that's being authored by their recruitment and travel workflows. They also have a disproportionate number of plain text passwords lying around. And I'm sure no one in your organization does that, where they create a text file and drop, important passwords into it. Fun story for you. I was on a call setting up a privacy data assessment for a customer, and we needed access to one of their on-prem file servers. And the people that we had on the call, there was about 8 of us, and no one had the password for this particular server. So they were in the background frantically texting Steve, or whatever the guy's name was, to see if they could find the password. And one of the guys live on the screen says, I wonder if this will work. And he popped up Copilot and he typed into Copilot, please give me the administrative password for server name. And Copilot went away and thought and said, yep, here's your password. And on this particular call, everybody except myself and one other person were like, yay, huge win for AI, fantastic. And there's myself and one other guy on this call going, no, that is not fantastic. That means somebody put the plain text password for your primary file share that contains or file server that contains all of your file shares, your core of your corporate data. They put it in a plain text file that's accessible to everyone, which means if somebody breaks into your environment, they don't even have to go looking for the password. All they have to do is pop up Copilot, and Copilot will give them the keys to the kingdom. And so when we start seeing boxes this big pop up in passwords and secrets, there is absolutely an opportunity to do some cleanup there. No surprise here, and if you remember back 2 slides, most of this company's data was in email, and we noticed in the survey results that email was not the largest pool of where people thought their data was hiding. If you're interested, Jaap and I have this fantastic assessment that we did of over 1 billion data objects across a bunch of customer environments, and the conclusion is it's always email. So if you don't think it's email, you should be asking or rethinking that question. Email is the scary place. For this particular customer, and this does align with the question that's popping up on your screen, they are also a Microsoft Purview customer. And one of the questions they had was, how is Purview doing? Wasn't particularly important to the data assessment, but because we were having that conversation, what we noticed is that there's a bunch of file types in here that are not supported by Purview. In other words, the solution that they think they have in Purview protecting all of their data isn't actually going to protect all of their data. So they're going to have to accommodate for that small subset, the 9 or 10% of their data that's left over at the end, outside of the scope of what Purview will protect. So that was a really valuable insight for them that we were able to provide by having had a look at their data. Document age is extremely important if we go back to what Russ was talking about, regulatory compliance. I'm sure you know that when you collect privacy data, whether it's from your employees, your customers, your partners, whatever it is, you have to collect that data for a specific purpose, use it only for the intended purpose, and it is your responsibility to delete that data when you're done with it. And those fines that you're seeing, that Jaap is mentioning in his portion of the presentation, those are because people are collecting data they don't need, using it in ways they did not obtain approval to use it, or they're hanging on to it when it's no longer needed, and now they've lost that data. And that's where most of the fines come from. So for this particular customer, we were able to tell them that a small portion of their data, roughly 6% of their data, we could tell them was compliant. And the rest of their privacy data is out of compliance. And in essence, the longer you hold on to that data, the tougher a time you have explaining to an auditor or a privacy officer or, heaven forbid, a court or media organization as to why you hung on to that data. So this, again, extremely valuable insight in terms of helping this company understand how they manage data. So to answer their first question, which was the privacy data risk, this was a slide that we put together, the executive summary. And there's a lot here, so let me take you through it. Down in the bottom corner, we were able to tell them that roughly 0.1% of their data, or 18 out of every 10,000 files, contain privacy data. Their data is growing at about 3.3% per month. And based on the observed growth rate of their privacy data, they're picking up almost 1,500 new items containing privacy data every month. That accumulation of privacy data means that their risk, currently measured, or at this time measured at about $10.6 million, is increasing by about $253,000 every month this customer does nothing. And that was an extremely valuable insight for them to be able to figure out how to justify the cost of jumping in and mitigating this risk. Interestingly enough, what really got them was that $10.6 million in total liability was above their cyber insurance thresholds. So for anybody out there who is looking at cyber insurance and wanting to know if they have enough coverage, this data risk assessment is a great way to answer that question. Another insight, and I sort of pulled this one out of the back third of the presentation just because I thought it was an interesting way in which the data comes together. And we talk about business insights. This particular organization owns commercial buildings, and they have commercial insurance policies on those buildings, which, based on their line of business and the way they work, are really important to them. And so they asked us to go and find insurance information among the other types of privacy data and business information that we went looking for. And what's interesting in this case is when we put together this graph, we went back to their team and said, how many people in your organization should have access to your insurance data? And they said, our insurance team is probably about 7 or 8 people. And we said, okay, did you know, ask those smart questions, did you know that you have privacy data in insurance information in almost 300 people's mailboxes, almost 100 OneDrives, and even closer to 100 different SharePoint site collections? Are all of those approved storage locations for insurance information? And they said, no, absolutely not. We should only ever find it in the mailboxes and OneDrives of the 8 or 9 people on that team and the 2 SharePoint site collections that team uses. In other words, they have insurance information that is being stored inappropriately, it's overexposed, and in the event of a breach, that data is going to be highly susceptible to attack. So then the question, of course, is what are you going to do about it? And that was what we did coming forward, was we were able to take this customer and give them 2 sets of insights. One related to their Copilot implementation, which is what you can see here. Answering the question, could we roll out Copilot today responsibly? The answer is yes. They could give it to about 36% of their users based on Mailbox. 51% of their user OneDrives are okay, and actually most of their SharePoint site collections are in pretty good shape. However, if they want to roll out Copilot globally across their organization, they are going to have to clean up 497 mailboxes, 245 SharePoints, OneDrive locations, and almost 150 SharePoint site collections. And you can see that equals about 80,000 items that they are going to have to sort out, that if they give those to Copilot, they are going to be in the same situation as those companies Jaap was presenting. Good news is we could tell them that's going to be 655 business users that you have to engage to do that cleanup. We found 29 different types of data that you're going to have to address. And for this particular customer, we gave them a 12 to 14 week timeline to be able to do that cleanup. And now we're talking, go back to what we said previously, find what's important, ask the smart questions. We showed you that on the insurance data, and we're able to give them a path in terms of how to then delete what they don't need, reorganize, and properly manage the data that's left. And we can take on and fix this type of a problem in about 12 weeks. So the last thing that we did for them, pulling it together, was stepping outside of their AI implementation and just going bigger picture, because 60,000 items feels like a whole lot of data. We came back to them and we said, here are 5 sample policies. And if you can execute against these 5 policies, we can cut your privacy risk by $5.7 million or 54%. And that's a huge savings. So 80-20 rule, let's focus your attention where it's most valuable and let's get it done. So having shown you some of those insights, hopefully that's valuable and gives you an idea of the type of business value we can create. So now let's pop the hood. Go for a test drive, whatever analogy you'd happen to like in this case, and let's take you in and show you a little bit of the actual software, because Russ promised you some JFK files, so we better deliver against that. And I'm going to refresh and make sure that I haven't logged out, which of course I have. We are the security and privacy company. And so there's 2 bits of magic within the data and more software that I'd like to focus on today. The first part is the actual policies that we create. And as we go into the data, you'll see that's extremely important. And then the second part is the dashboards that the data and more software is able to bring up. You'll recognize some of these graphics straight out of the assessment that we provided, where we can go in and we can start to tell you which accounts have the greatest risk. We can give you AI readiness percentages. We can break down by content source. We've got a really, really great set of dashboards to help you answer the question, how am I doing with this sort of assessment? Specific to the data, if we talk about creating data visibility, we can jump into the data here, and I will just quickly give you a few examples. Let's say we want to find passport information, and we can pop in here. We'll take a look at the first few files, and yep, these are absolutely passports that are being saved, which the software is able to detect and find. It will do this in, what is it, Jaap, 28 different languages and across a ton of different countries. Let's say we go after driver's licenses. Here is, yep, that is a Saskatchewan driver's license, absolutely. If we pick something like, for example, I don't know, grab a health card, we can come in here and we can find European health cards and health numbers existing in documentation. And because this is a sample of real data and sample data, something I found as I was digging through the data is we do actually have a roadside criminal check form that was detected and brought forward. So we're talking about a really comprehensive engine that can find, you can see in the tag cloud up here, not just basic things like social insurance numbers and social security numbers. We can find sexual orientation, union membership, political references, and all sorts of things. So it starts by being able to create that visibility. So now, the real question, and because Jaap and I are both history and political buffs, when the JFK files, the previously classified documents, were declassified and released, I sadly lost at paper, scissors, rock, so I got to spend the 2.5 or 3 hours downloading all of the files. and loading them up into data and more. The real question is there any privacy data or sensitive information in the JFK files? And we thought that would be kind of fun. So we went in and we scanned them. And drum roll, please, in the released JFK files, there are 2,347 of them. Thank you very much. We found 15 national ID numbers, 1 passport, and 1 reference to ethnic origin. Now, disclaimer here, because this is getting recorded and put out on the internet, we are making full assumption that the US government absolutely knew that all of this information was in the files, and they left it there deliberately. There's no way that it would have been missed in the redaction or release of that information. Yeah. So as we jump in, we were talking about the classification engine, and the one that I find interesting is ethnic origin. So if we jump in and we take a look at this file, a couple of things. First, you can see that this is not good data. These are handwritten, marked up documents that have been scanned. Yes, the software finds all of that and is able to pick up in multiple languages all of the text. If we scroll down in this document till we find it, there it is. The reference in this document is somebody saying he is Cuban with reference to the specific individual that was mentioned in this document. What's interesting is as you scroll this document, you can see the word Cubans and Cuban and Cuba show up in multiple places in multiple different contexts throughout this document, but none of those uniquely identify an individual, reference their ethnic origin, therefore are not privacy data. And the data and more software can actually tell them apart and is able to pick this one up and go, yep, that is now a specific reference to ethnic origin. So I thought that was a really great example that we were able to bring forward. If we jump in and take a look at the national identifying numbers, and I will just arbitrarily pick, let's say, the second one, and we take a look at this, again, you can see we found a social security number in this document. Let's see if we can find it. So we scroll our way down, and there is our social security number filled out on a form with this person's name. So here you can see we've picked that up, we've detected it, we've validated that that is in fact a legitimate social security number, and here it is. So let's ask the next question then. Let's suppose you have overlapping business requirements. Let's say you actually want to know, let's say we're Elizabeth and we're going, oh, they released my social security number. What else did they release on my behalf through the data and more software? And to answer that question, what we can do is, in addition to finding privacy data really well, Data and More has what we call a data privacy manager, and data subject manager, sorry. And the data subject manager goes through and either using LLM or OCR finds all of the individuals that are mentioned in the data with privacy information and starts combining that information together to give us a profile. So if we come in and we search for our gal Elizabeth, think Freedom of Information request, here's the Elizabeth that we were looking at. And if we pull up that user, we can determine that there is only one file and only one reference of this person's privacy data in this entire data set. Fantastic insight, and we can pull that for you in seconds. So the last thing that I wanted to cover when we really talk about the privacy data is, let's suppose we are in a situation where maybe we're the US government and we need to release some files, or we have some sort of let's say court case or discovery or something like that, and we need to be able to share and show information. However, we don't want to share and show all of the information in this file. And so what I've done is I've configured the Data and More redaction engine and turned it on for this document and said, please redact all of the people's names and our gal Elizabeth's social security number. Please redact that. But we do need to release this file. We need to make it available to somebody. And I understand all of the people's names that are mentioned in this document probably don't need to be redacted, but it does make it more fun that way. So I'm going to download this redacted file. Give it a second while it pulls down this data set. And there we are, saving the document. And then I will bring up File Explorer. I will open that document. I will pull up the report. And here you can see we have the redacted document with all of the bits of information that I have told it to redact no longer in the document. So this becomes a really, really powerful way for you to be able to use your data, find and leverage where that privacy data is to your benefit to help you meet the business requirements that you have around all of those legislations that Russ was talking about. And this is the kind of stuff that prevents you from getting nailed with those fines that we were talking about. So that's what we have in terms of the data redaction. And then the last question that typically gets asked is, suppose I want to do a data cleanup. Let's say I actually need to clean up some of this information. And one of the examples that I put together for the purposes of this, which is a very common example, is let's say somebody comes along, we were looking at those passports previously, and says, I want to find all the non-compliant passport information that exists in my environment. And I want to do a cleanup against that. What the data and more software will do, we're back to that methodology, find the data, and it will pop up. We've set a filter that says, here is all of the non-compliant passport information. We can tell you exactly whose OneDrives and folders and so on that data is in, and we can give the users the opportunity to come in and tell us if there's anything here that we need to keep. Because the same way that we have yet to find an organization that actually understands their data, we also have yet to find an organization that is comfortable just putting on a blindfold and saying, we're just going to purge every passport document older than a certain age. It doesn't work. You have to engage your business users. And this gives us a mechanism to be able to go to our finance team, pop up this list of passports in front of our finance team and say, is there anything here that we need to keep? And if one of the users goes, no, you can delete everything, but you can't delete these 3 documents. I really need that one, and that one held onto, but all the rest of these you can delete. The data and more software can accomplish that by taking into consideration the capability of the engine to create the visibility, ask the smart questions, and position the data, and harvest what the data owners and data subject managers know about the data to incorporate that into the overall data governance and compliance. And if my users come along and tell me these 3 documents are subject to a legal investigation, a project that's still going, something like that, we now have the business justification as to why we kept that data, and it is now in compliance, assuming this user is operating on that data in the right way. And all of that, as we showed you on the dashboards, will roll up together into this summary of here's how you're doing, here's how it looks. And if we go back to the slides, is what allows us to create these types of insights where we can come to an organization and say, did you know that you have a ton of privacy data duplicates sitting in your deleted items folder? If you clean those up, and for this particular customer, that represents $3.4 million in liability. And that becomes a really powerful insight. And it's not just, here's a whole bunch of problems, it's a practical path to be able to fix them. And that is what I've got. Yap and Russ, is there anything I've missed? Anything you want to add about the JFK files? And are there any questions that might have come in through the chat, because I'm not watching it, with regards to this that we want to address before I stop sharing and pass it back to you, gentlemen?
Can we do Roswell next? But I'm not looking, I'm not looking for any like compliance things there. I'm just curious. Well, another conversation.
So they've just released the Epstein files. There's been a whole bunch of those. There's so many memes on the internet.
Let's not go there. Let's not.
And there's a reason Yap and I haven't downloaded those files and loaded them up yet. We don't know if that's a good topic or not. But maybe if there's enough interest, if you want us to do the Epstein files on the next webinar, post it in the comments.
Stop it. Stop it.
I'll have one thing to add to the conversation, and that's one little thing that came up a few times already, and that's cybersecurity insurance. Even if we stay locally within Canada, one of the bigger breaches in the last month was the city of Hamilton. All you have to Google is the city of Hamilton. You'll find tons and tons of information about it. Now, any IT leader that's dealing with this knows that your cyber insurance just went from, in the last 2 years, went from about 2 pages to a whole book. And what's happening more and more is that your liability might be higher than your insurance, but you're going to be assuming that your insurance is going to pay for it. What we're seeing now in the case, for example, in the city of Hamilton, is that they effectively said to a large portion of the settlement, we're not paying for it. You did not protect your data. You see, people all do a lot of check marks. They do a lot of, yeah, I've got this. And then it's kind of like renting a car. It's all fine till you crash it. And then when you crash it, suddenly every lawyer around the corner comes by and be like, did you really do that? Were you honest about the insurance? And if you don't prove to them that you have been taking care, A, of your data, but also have been classifying it and protecting it, it's a really, really big piece. So what we're finding usually as a first part in our assessment is some of the low-hanging fruit. We can, these policies that Zach has been showing, one of the things we can do is that, well, why don't we just apply a sensitivity label or retention label to some of your most sensitive data? This doesn't take 12 weeks, it maybe takes an hour. And then within 1 hour of work, we can actually start protecting the majority of your vulnerabilities, the majorities of your non-compliance issues. It doesn't mean the problem is sorted. It just means if your African prince that you given access to your data now has access to this data, it doesn't necessarily mean they can open it without an ID account unless they have an ID account of your company. There's a wide variety of options that will start opening once you start identifying, classifying your data. That's my one little piece I wanted to add.
I would say thank you, Yop and Sag. I'm sure our audience is clapping. We had some nice comments. Ami, by the way, it's our pleasure. We have a question, and the answer is absolutely. But the question is, does the solution work with Office 365 and Windows Server? Yes, as we just demonstrated. Maybe there might be a little more to that question, but the second question, how accurate is your AI engine to find all sensitive data in network storage along with online cloud data?
Sure.
Fantastic question.
I can
I actually, sorry, go
Go
for
ahead,
it.
yeah.
Okay, I'll take it. I'll answer it in a bit of a bigger way because in this whole journey, you're going to find that when you're looking to identify classified data, there's really two streams. You're going to have a bunch of people that crawl data, searchers, these type of things. And then every time you're looking for something, you're looking for keywords or an expression or something generic. Purview is one of those examples. We don't have an AI engine to find all sensitive data. What we have is we have about 5 different layers that rely on indexation to really take your data and take it to the next level. So the first step is we index it. Then we have several layers of 30 million rules and anti-rules to accurately identify and classify data. These aren't just find me a sequence of 7 numbers, which is a passport. Because you're going to deal with about 700, so 7,000% in most cases of false positives. So we have a lot of rules and anti-rules. We have definitions. We use AI once we classify data. We are active in about 27 different languages, 28 different privacy laws that we support. And it's privacy data, as you've been seeing in this demo, is not just a passport. It's sexual orientation, it's union membership, it's religion, it's a whole bunch of things that relate to you, the person. And we do use AI to translate some of the phrases and meanings across different languages, because in different languages, words have different meanings. You can't just take a word and assume it means the same word as same meaning, the same value in another language. So we actually have a thing called multi-classification. If you want to know more about it, let us know. We'll set up a chat. We rely on indexation, and we have 5 layers of accuracy to assure that the classification we have is working. And yes, because we're also relying on indexation, anything that we can index, we're good to go. We do 99% of our projects on unstructured data. That's really our specialty. So all of Office 365, we use Graph API to connect. It's standard. It's honestly, it takes, I think our record this year for starting a POC is it's about 3 minutes. And I see a next question I'll just tackle right away. 20 terabytes of data. Honestly, it's not an issue. Every index server can tackle about 25 terabytes. So that would be one of the standards and easiest setups. We deal with a lot of smaller companies that have only a few terabytes data. Our largest customers have up to 400,000 users. And now we're start talking about petabytes of data that we support.
I have a question. As we have the key takeaways up here, how easy is it for you to set up the risk assessment for a customer, large or small?
Zach, you want to take it?
How easy is it?
Let me
From
ask
a
that question.
technical-
Does Data and More pride itself on being able to make that process as non-invasive as humanly possible,
Yeah.
as easy as humanly possible? And do you guys pride yourself on records internally by which you can expedite that process for a
Sure.
client that's interested?
Yeah, I was curious if that was looking for the technical answer or the business answer, and it sounds like you're
Always
looking more
business.
for the business answer on that.
Always business.
Always the business answer. The business answer is it is very, very straightforward and very non-invasive. As Jaap said, we can get it up and running very quickly. We are not deploying agents all over the place and all of those sorts of things. And we are using all of the, because we're talking Microsoft 365 and Windows Server, as was mentioned in the comments, we are using all the Microsoft best practices for how we access and get to that data. So anyone who is familiar with those sorts of things and system administration, usually we're able to send them a quick document and say, here's what we need. And going back to that data assessment slide, the most complicated part for most of the customers is picking the set of users and the sample users and sample data that they want us to assess. The actual setup, getting the scan going and pulling out the results is incredibly easy and incredibly non-invasive. And usually the amount of time to get that stuff set up is less than 20 minutes on the part of the customer, unless they want to spend an hour sitting around and debating which users to include and which users to exclude.
Thank you, Zach. We have 8 minutes. I see there's a George, forgive me if I'm pronouncing your name wrong, Galley, who has his hand up. If you could type your question into the chat, George, we'll be able to tackle it. I'm not seeing any other questions in the chat, so we'll give George a second, unless he didn't mean to have his hand up.
I've also typed question or specific answers to the 3 questions that were posted in the chat. So if you're one of those people, either Frederick, Ramin, or Charlie, please jump in and have a look at it. And if we haven't sufficiently answered your question, please let us know. We'd be happy to either take it on here in our last few minutes or follow up with you directly after the fact.
SOC 1, SOC 2, are you able to provide SOC 1, SOC 2 certification? George, are you asking if Data and More is a SOC 1, SOC 2 type company, or are you asking if they're able to actually give you that attestation? The answer is they're not auditors at the end of the day, but for SAG and Jaap, are you guys SOC 1 or SOC 2 type certified as an organization?
So as an organization, no, because the SOC 1, SOC 2 certifications don't apply to our organization, but the solution that we deliver is SOC 1, SOC 2 compliant, depending on whether we put it in a SOC 1 or SOC 2 compliant data center. And we have both within the cloud that we run. So if SOC 1, SOC 2 compliance is important to an organization, we can absolutely meet that requirement. But we are not a SOC 1 or SOC 2 certification or compliance body. However, if you are looking to get your data compliant with SOC 1 and SOC 2, we can absolutely help with that process by everything that we described. We can find what's important, we can help you delete what you don't need, and then we can properly organize and manage over time the data that you have left, so that when somebody comes in and does the SOC 1 or SOC 2 certification, you can pop up the Data and More reports and go, yep, here we can say it, do it, and prove it. So in that regard, yes, hopefully that answers the SOC question.
One little add-on is that we We follow a wide variety of frameworks. So the whole DAMA and even the data management body of knowledge, I believe it is. There's a wide variety of options. The flexibility that we have, the reason we sell into, for example, Canadian government, that we're NATO certified, the reason that we sell to police regions, military agencies, secret agencies, those guys are funny. They tell me that they didn't buy and then give me an order that they buy. So they're really fun to work with. But the point is that our software can exist in a DMZ in any location of your choice, and will have full options. So whatever issues and concerns you may have, if we meet immediately guaranteeing the strictest requirements, because you can literally put us in a desktop somewhere with no connection to the internet, and it will still work. So I can guarantee right here that we meet whatever requirement you have. We are running the solution in AWS, Azure, Oracle. It's whatever you want. The indexation server that exists, we have options for hosting. Think directMSP has options for hosting. We have options for hosting. You can have options for hosting. It really doesn't matter. So in a conversation that we can have after this, we'll have a chat about your preference, and then we'll take it from there.
3 minutes left. There's one last question. If Sag or you want to type the answer to it, and then we'll wrap things up. Thank you, Sag. Sag's already on top of it. So in summary, we said at the outset of this meeting is that we wanted to have you leave with one practical insight strategy, a starting point. Some of the things that we hope you take away: compliance is not optional anymore, and ignoring it, you're going to risk fines and reputation. You can't protect what you don't know. Visibility is the foundation, and AI is moving fast, but regulation is moving slow. So if you don't govern now, you're going to be exposed later and you're at risk. It's easy to start. Fun fact about Yop, Sag, and myself is that we all come from big organizations that used to throw human death and suffering at this problem in terms of large billable professional services engagements to help organizations find a starting point and a roadmap. What is the genesis? Where do we begin? How do we quantify and qualify our data? What is our risk profile? How do we present that to the stakeholders? What stakeholders should we start with? How do we define a budget for something like this based off criticality? This is why these guys are a partner. This risk assessment is so powerful and it's free, and that doesn't lessen the value. It actually promotes the efficacy of the platform itself. We are going to be following up with all of you, but if you are interested in this, reach out to your account executive, reach out to us via the website link. You should have all of those links at the end of the day. And we would love to talk about setting this up. Beyond the risk assessment, if you want to get into MVPs and POCs and creating that boutique or bespoke roadmap, we can help. Last but not least, as I said before, your feedback matters. So please fill out this webinar survey that you will get at the outset of this. You'll have the opportunity to win a Lenovo portable monitor. Thank you for joining us. We look forward to hearing from you. We look forward to working with you. Have a great rest of your week, everybody. Be well.
Thank you all.